And we know that our minds they are designed to operate in certain ways. We know that when we get to a certain age, if we have relatively healthy relationships with people, that what takes place in the right hemisphere of my brain is different than what takes place in the left hemisphere of my brain eventually, because of how it practices its way into that. But we would say that if it doesn't take much, and this really it gets into where shame plays a role. It doesn't take much for us to uh, be aware that children come out of the uterus wanting things, and then they want to make things, and by the time they're in third grade, we have helped them become anxious enough that they worry that they're going to make things in the wrong way. And so already their creativity and their longing starts to get uh, like spliced together, if you will, with shame and with anxiety. And that part of us then that is afraid to create because of the mistakes that we will make. Now, some kids will overcome this and they will continue to create. Others will have more difficulty with this, and they will their creativity will be buried. But we would say that when we say that we are dead to things, and as St. Paul would say, we were dead in our sin. One way, I mean, I'm not a theologian or a biblical scholar, but one way that I would say that the Bible characterizes sin, the way that it describes it, the way that it tells stories about it, is that sin is my proclivity to continually turn away from relationship. I will turn away from relationship and turn inward only to myself. And I do that in response to shame. And because I do that, I turn away from collaborative relationships. I turn away from being able to fully create. And I do it as a coping strategy to protect myself against the wounds that I've experienced. And then that very activity continues to turn me further and further and further away from people. And the further away from relationship I go, the more isolated I become. The more isolated I become, the more asphyxiating it becomes to my soul. And when I become, and so we become literally quite dead to God's presence. And then God comes in Jesus. Actually, God comes in the beginning. He comes to Noah. He comes through Abraham. He comes through Moses. He comes through lots of different ways. And I keep finding ways to stiff arm him. I mean, look, if we'll kill Jesus, we'll kill anybody. And I keep stiff arming him because his presence, his intimacy, his movement toward me, which is an act of recreativity. He's going to redo what he did in Genesis 1 and 2. And I, like Adam, am made uncomfortable with his proximity. Like, intimacy is uncomfortable because he's starting to
Sure.
push into parts of my heart that I hate the most. And when you see it, just like you're not going to want to have anything to do with me, so I can't tolerate that. But it is in our willing to take the risk to believe that Jesus really does love me enough that I'm going to take the risk to take at least the first step out of the boat, just like Peter, and then the second step and the third step. And there are going to be plenty of times I'm going to look around and be reminded of the parts of me that still don't believe, that still are afraid, only to find that Jesus hasn't left the room, that Jesus is not leaving me alone.